Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Saranyakaro Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nande Namataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Prabhuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Prabhuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. In the translation, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha Krishna. So you can repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So yesterday we ended with discussing briefly the relief from material desires, which is the first characteristic of pure devotional service, or it's called Klesh Agni. That when one takes to devotional service, it brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. And then we discussed, reactions, sinful reactions, aprarabdha karma, that means to come, prarabdha, which means the current one, and in between from to come, it becomes a kutam and bijam papam. In other words, almost forming a seed and then becoming, sprouting like a seed, and then manifesting the current life. So, and then we concluded with devotional service. It destroys all stages of sinful reactions. So now we'll continue with the chapter 1 in the section called Relief from Material Distress when one takes to devotional service. And let's get to page number 5, that first paragraph there. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes another verse from the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Can you put it on the screen for us? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'm reading. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes another verse from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 33rd chapter, verse 6, in which Devahuti addresses her son Kapila Dev and says, "My dear Lord, there are 9 different kinds of devotional service, beginning from hearing and chanting. Anyone who hears about your pastimes, who chants about your glories, and who offers you obeisances, who thinks of you, and in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service, even if he is born in a family of dog eaters, the lowest grade of mankind, becomes immediately qualified to perform sacrifices." Unquote. As such, how is it possible that anyone actually engaged in devotional service? So note the word actually here. I'll read again. As such, how is it possible that anyone actually engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness has not become purified? It is not possible. One who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service has, without doubt, become free from all contaminations of material sinful activities. Devotional service, therefore, has the power to actually nullify all kinds of reactions to sinful deeds. A devotee is nevertheless always alert not to commit any sinful activities. This is a specific qualification as a devotee. So we will read a little bit further now on page number 6. And the paragraph begins with, "It is stated in the Padma Purana." Can you go to that? We skip. Yes, it is stated. I'm reading on. It is stated in the Padma Purana that there are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities, which are listed as follows. The effect which is not yet fruitified, and the Sanskrit word is aparabdha karma, not yet, still to come. The effect which is lying as seed, bijam, and the effect which is already mature, that means parabdha, that means it's current. And for the effect which is almost mature, which is sort of kutam. It is also stated that all these effects become immediately vanquished for those who surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu and become engaged in his devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. Now, in the next paragraph, it's a nice thing because it talks about vaccination and contamination and so forth. So I'll read. Those effects described as almost mature refer to the distress from which one is suffering at present. Okay. That was number 4, which is parabdharada. And the effects lying as seed are in the core of the heart, where there's a certain stock of sinful desires which are like seeds, and the word is bijam. The Sanskrit word kutam means they are almost ready to produce the seed, which means almost mature, or the effect of the seed. An immature effect refers to the case where the seedling has not begun. From the statement of Padma Puran, it is understood that material contamination is very subtle. Its beginning, its fruition, and results, and how one suffers such results in the form of distress, are part of a great chain. When one catches some disease, it is often very difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease, where it originated, and how it is maturing. The suffering of a disease, however, does not appear all of a sudden. It actually takes time. And as in the medical field, or for precaution's sake, the doctor injects a vaccination to prevent the growing of contamination. The practical injection to stop all the fruitifications of the seeds of our sinful desires is simply engagement in Krishna consciousness. It's a very similar situation everyone is facing now. In other words, this COVID-19 virus, it's like you don't know it's there. So Prabhupada uses the word very difficult to, you could say, in other words, very difficult to see. It's very subtle. See? Then in the beginning stages, that virus, it becomes difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease and how it originated and how it's maturing. So therefore, it takes some time, and then suddenly it appears after maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Same thing is discussed here. So Srila Prabhupada said that the vaccination of the practical activities of simple engagement in Krishna consciousness or devotional service will even purify one of some disease or even virus that's yet to come, but one does not know it's going to come. It will purify that too. Now, in the next paragraph, which I'm not going to read, it says that sometimes, although one is becoming purified from all types of sinful reactions, whether the effect yet to be purified, lying as seed, almost mature, or the effect which is already mature. Everything, in any circumstance and situation of its growth of this sinful reactions, will be nullified and destroyed. However, we give an example. Put me on the screen. Oh, we give an example like how we read possibly yesterday or 2 days ago that the devotional service, it is like such a thing in Krishna consciousness that it will burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. It's a fire that will burn everything. And taking the same analogy, at times we know that a fire can burn everything and it reduces everything to ashes. See? But just in a few days or even a few weeks, it has not destroyed the roots. So from the roots which are below the ground, it comes up again. It comes up again. Those desires for sinful activities. So the sinful desire which is lying as seed in the root must also be removed within the process of Krishna consciousness. And some examples are given, 2 examples are given in the next 2 paragraphs about how when the root of sinful desire, although it destroys everything externally on the ground, but it does not destroy the root by the fire of Krishna consciousness. 2 examples are given how it can come up again. And then we'll discuss how to even uproot the desire to sin. So on the next paragraph on page 7, put it on the screen. It says by performing, no, next paragraph, the next one. Go down, go, yes. By performing Vedic ritualistic activities, like Karma Kanda section of Vedas, which means demigod worship, and I'm reading on, by giving money in charity and by undergoing austerity, one can temporarily become free from the reactions of sinful activities. But at the next moment, he must again become engaged in sinful activities. For example, a person suffering from venereal disease on account of excessive indulgence in sex life has to undergo some severe pain in medical treatment, and he is then cured for the time being. But because he has not been able to remove the sex desire from his heart, he must again indulge in the same thing and become a victim of the same disease. So medical treatment may give temporary relief from the distress of such venereal disease. But unless one is trained to understand that sex life is abominable, it is impossible to be saved from such repeated distress. Similarly, the ritualistic performances, charity, and austerity which are recommended in the Vedas may temporarily stop one from acting in sinful ways. But as long as the heart is not clear, one will have to repeat sinful activities again and again. So this one example is given there. Now the other example is given, next paragraph. Another example given in Srimad Bhagavatam concerns the elephant who enters into a lake and takes a bath very seriously, cleansing his body thoroughly. Then as soon as he comes into shore, he again takes some dust from the earth and throws it over his body. Similarly, a person who is not trained in Krishna consciousness cannot become completely free from the desire for sinful activities. Neither the yoga process nor philosophical speculations nor fruitive activities can save one from the seeds of sinful desires. Only by being engaged in devotional service can this be done. So we'll come to this discussion quite shortly again. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Padati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So now we come to the root cause. In other words, we gave the analogy and a description from Kapila Dev to Devahuti in the previous verse. No, rather it was actually from Lord Krishna to Uddhava. He says, "My dear Uddhava," in the 11th canto, 14th chapter, verse 19, "My dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire, which can burn to ashes unlimited fuel in a supply." In other words, devotional service can burn up all the fuel of material sinful activities as well as sinful reactions coming from those sinful activities. Okay? So now we're going to tell and discuss how to uproot the desire to sin, which leads to further sin. And we're going to go into the next paragraph in our reading, and then we'll discuss further. So can we get to it? I'm going to complete this, Kleshagni in the next two paragraphs. There is another evidence in the 4th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, verse 39, wherein Sanat Kumar says, quote, "My dear king, the false ego of a human being is so strong that it keeps him in material existence as if tied by a strong rope. Only the devotees can cut off the knot of the strong rope very easily by engaging themselves in Krishna consciousness. Others who are not in Krishna consciousness but are trying to become great mystics or great ritual performers cannot advance like the devotees. Therefore, it is the duty of everyone to engage himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness in order to be freed from the tight knot of false ego and engagement in material activities. I'm reading on, unquote from that place. Now here is the answer to uproot. The desire to uproot it from the ground, underneath the ground, take it out. Here's the desire. This tight knot of false ego is due to ignorance. So that is the answer. Everything is due to ignorance. And I'm reading on. As long as one is ignorant about his identity, he is sure to act wrongly and thereby become entangled in material contamination. This ignorance of factual knowledge can also be dissipated by Krishna consciousness, as it is confirmed in the Padma Purana as follows. Quote, pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the highest enlightenment. And when such enlightenment is there, it is just like a blazing forest fire, killing all the inauspicious snakes of desire. The example is given in this connection that when there is a forest fire, the extensive blazing automatically kills all the snakes in the forest. There are many, many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dry foliage, and the snakes are immediately attacked. Animals who have 4 legs can flee from the fire, or can at least try to flee, but the snakes are immediately killed. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. So this is another analogy of the snakes of ignorance. But the other analogy I gave earlier on is the roots. Like the weeds may go from a fire, but the fire cannot touch the roots. So the root of sinful desire has to come out. Now, how will this take place? Just to remind us that the root of all sinful desires is ignorance. Ignorance of our true identity as spirit souls and as servants and servants of the Supreme Lord to be engaged in devotional service. So we find this distress has 3 causes. Or you could say, Rupa Goswami explained these 3 causes of miseries. Sometimes that word is used instead of the word distress, miseries. So this miseries as a sort of root cause. See? And the root cause is ignorance. And when this root cause is ignorance, that ignorance leads one to actually engage in activities that are contrary to devotional service. And the basic thought of ignorance is that one is not knowing what is one's Sanatan Dharma, and one is eternal spirit soul in connection with the Supreme Spirit soul in devotional service. So this ignorance leads to activities which unknowingly will attract sinful reaction, which is aprarabdha. And that sinful reactions that may come in the current state, that one is actually suffering, is called prarabdha, via kutam and bijam. Now I'm repeating these statements once more so that we become very clear on these things. So just to make it simple, these 3 causes of miseries first begin with ignorance, and ignorance leads to papam, or sinful activity, and sinful activity leads to one becoming conditioned to desires for further sinful activity. within the heart. And that further leads again to ignorance. So because the desire for sense gratification comes from ignorance, not knowing, so I use a term that it is like the innocence of being in ignorance. One does not know that one is not supposed to be engaged in sinful activity due to not knowing one's eternal identity as the spirit soul in connection with devotional service of the Supreme Spirit Soul. So therefore, the desire for sense gratification comes from ignorance. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada says that suffering comes from sin and sin comes from ignorance. So therefore, to remove these kleshas, to remove this distress, or to remove these miseries means, essentially at the bottom line, means to remove ignorance. Now, we see that Srila Prabhupada gave two examples of, sex life, that, one has some disease and then comes back to it after one is cured. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example of an elephant bathing, which I didn't read, but it's in the next paragraph. The elephant bathes in the water to become clean. But as soon as it comes onto the land again, it just like sort of, again, rolls in the dust there and becomes dirty again. So there's no sort of, value to when taking a bath and then making yourself unclean again by coming into the ground and rolling oneself just as the elephant's bathing. And Srila Prabhupada also gave another nice example, quoting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that in a sense, they say like that. They say that, 1,000 prostitutes, they come in the morning or evening, and every day they take bath in the Ganges or Ganga to become free from the sinful reactions of being prostitutes during the day. But it has no value of taking bath in the Ganga because the next day they do the same thing again. They go about the business to being prostitutes. See? So therefore, that is the difference between devotional service and other processes of, you could say, atonement or prayaschitta, or even pious activities, which Prabhupada mentions here, giving in charity and undergoing austerities, which only temporarily frees one from sinful reaction. Now, we're going to come to another very important thing that one has to be careful for. Now, even if you root out the seeds of the sinful desire, which may sprout and grow again, and then one engages in a material sinful life and sense gratification, one has to be careful for weeds, which is like in relation to, the same analogy of like the fire burning everything, but the roots are still there. Then you uprooted that sinful desires in the terms of the roots of these plants, and you no more have those sinful desires. But you may not have those sinful desires still. But others may have sinful desires that are around you. Just like this morning, I was going for my walk into the fields here. And I saw one devotee was in his patch of land, dealing with the crops that he's growing. And there were three types of crops that were growing. One was naturally growing without putting seed, but the seeds just come by the blowing of the wind. And that was some kind of herbs, leafy vegetable. But he was actually planting chili in one sense and tomatoes in another way. But every few days or even after a week, he has to go into the field and uproot all the weeds around these favorable items as the tomato plant and the chili plant and so forth. He has to uproot all those weeds because they are unfavorable. They will choke, actually. They will choke the favorable tomato plant and the favorable chili plant. They will choke it. So therefore the farmer or the devotee has to go and uproot those weeds and not be surrounded by those weeds and then be choked and not grow in devotional service. One is it's very, very important consideration. So Srila Prabhupada used to quote Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which explains that when one engaged in devotional service, what are those weeds? Although devotional service is favorable, but the devotional service can attract weeds around them. And the weeds can even come from your personal self unknowingly, and you do not know. And the weeds are in the form of respect, worship, followers, getting facility, and so forth. Now, why is this? Because bhakti is all attractive. Devotional service is all attractive. And because devotional service is all attractive, and the devotee who is the abode of bhakti or devotional service also becomes all attractive. So the respect and the worship and the followers and the facility that one receives when one practices Krishna consciousness may distract one, from devotional service. And there may be lapses of not seriously continuing in devotional service. And that is called that the weeds will choke your devotional creeper. So there may be lapses in that sense. So that's one type of weeds in that sense. So now, we should be careful for the other type of weeds, that we should not surround ourselves intimately and take association of those who are not in Krishna consciousness, although they may be innocent in their ignorance. We should be careful not to take close association of non-devotees, although we meant to give them our association to try to introduce them and bring them to the practice of Krishna consciousness. Now, in other words, when the seed of devotional service or bhakti is planted in the heart by another devotee who already has that seed by preaching to you, like that, then one has to begin to water that seed. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu likens the watering to hearing and chanting the holy names and hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord by reading and absorbing oneself and including studying the scriptures. So while one is watering the seed of devotional service within the heart, one may also sometimes be watering not only the seeds, but one may be watering other seeds of the weeds that are also being around or being sprouted around, you could say, the bhakti creeper that is growing. Now, another example can be given. Sometimes we worship Tulsi, and when you look very closely in and around Tulsi Devi, there may be weeds growing. Now, nobody grew those weeds there. How did it come? But that's the attractiveness of Tulsi Devi. She attracts everyone. Similarly, a devotee who's the abode of devotional service or bhakti even can attract weeds. So when we water the process of devotional service or bhakti, we should be careful also not to water the weeds that come around, and that may sprout and begin to actually choke the growth of the devotional creeper. See? So even though we may not commit any more sins within the process of devotional service, but we may still get carried away by some opulence that comes with engaging in devotional service, or for some followers, or some profit and wealth and adoration, and even position and power and distinction. So Lord Chaitanya mentions examples like this. And when that happens within devotional service, then although in the beginning stages you had the simple heart of being simple, then your heart may become a little bit complicated and one's behavior may become a little bit more duplicitous. And also one may resort to becoming a little hard-hearted, even in the association with devotees and even giving pain to others because of these weeds that are coming over in one's consciousness. So therefore, these weeds, they actually sprout after one begins the process of devotional service. And they are very subtle because they may just look like the devotional creepers sometimes, but actually they are weeds. So Lord Chaitanya recommends that we must be very careful of these other things other than devotional service. See? And we should learn to distinguish between the unwanted weeds that may actually grow into creepers and choke the bhakti lata beach of the seed and the sprouting and the creeper of devotional service. So these unwanted creepers can become stronger and really overpower that devotional creeper. And then when one becomes intoxicated by such things as position, as power, as fame, and intoxicated by worship and followers and opulence and facilities and so forth, then one will begin to identify with that and one will commit offenses. One will commit offenses. And then what happens? One commits offenses, then one's position in devotional service becomes more sort of prominent in one's consciousness. And Prabhupada says here, in quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam, then one's false ego increases. And when one's false ego increases, then what happens? And one becomes intoxicated further that I am in control, that I am the doer, that I am in charge. And I'll give you some examples. Sometimes one may have like a position of responsibility like the temple president. So if the temple president, is intoxicated by his position as temple president, then when somebody enters the office and speaks to him, and if that person is not so surrendered to the temple president, or may even be argumentative and so forth. So the temple president sometimes may like sort of bang the desk and say, I am the temple president. Now you can get out. Like that. So therefore, these weeds can lead to such false ego that one can use one's position in devotional service, but not be engaged in devotional service itself due to the false ego of having a position and having followers and having adoration or worship or respect. So one should be careful for that. I just gave one example. See? Sometimes, an example like being a mother or a father, they may tell the child, don't you know I'm your mother? As if the child has forgotten it. No. But there's a sense of like overpowering, others due to one's false ego. And immediately the other person is not deterred by it. He knows this person is just using his position to misuse or abuse me. So one has to be careful for such weeds also. They're very subtle. They're very, very subtle. Even in positions in devotional service. And one may not be able to distinguish such a thing as an unwanted creeper. So then one can become more and more hard-hearted and more impersonal towards devotees. So now how to finally remove this ignorance? So gradually, by chanting the holy names, one will come to the stage of actual devotional service, and then bhakti will gradually destroy the desire to even commit sin, and bhakti will also give you the potency to discriminate and distinguish what is the devotional kripa, and which may even similarly look like an unwanted kripa. So you'll distinguish what is the real kripa and these unwanted kripas that can choke the kripa of devotional service. So there's a beautiful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, the second chapter, in text number 7. He says, and it's a well-known verse, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayati Ashuvairagya. Jnananam Chayad Ayuttikam. Ayuttikam. Now, what does this mean? By rendering devotional service unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge, which actually removes the ignorance of material existence. And that will remove the distress and the anxieties in material life. So one immediately acquires causeless knowledge, and also that's jnana. Jnananam chayad hayutikam. And then vairagya. In other words, janayati ashu vairagya. So one will immediately be bestowed. It will enter by its own sweet will, causeless knowledge. That means no cause. There's no material cause to it. And one will automatically feel detached from one's own sinful activities and uproot the sinful desires. That means detachment from activities of sinful activities in this material world. So therefore, by engaging in devotional service, knowledge and detachment will automatically follow. In other words, sometimes one should have transcendental knowledge from Prabhupada's books. That will remove ignorance. At the same time, by chanting the holy names and favorable association of devotees, knowledge and detachment can automatically also come. And when we become detached from sense gratification, then we become free, not only from sinful activities, but even from the desire for further sinful activities and self gratification. All right, I've sort of completed this first characteristic of pure devotional service in terms of Klesha Agni, where Srila Prabhupada translates as devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress or suffering, or anxiety. We can take some questions now. Otherwise, I will get to the second characteristic. Anyone? I know I've spoken for a while already today, over 45 minutes, so let's take some questions on this first characteristic of devotionals, or questions in general. Anyone?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, please come onto the screen. Please come onto the screen.
It's not so clear, Maharaj.
Yeah, were you in darkness there somewhere?
Yeah, the lights are on, but I think the camera it's not working so well.
Okay, Nara Narayan, your name is.
Yes, Maharaj.
Where are you based?
I'm in Klang, Maharaj.
Oh, Klang, Ki Jai. You know, in the early to mid 80s, I was initiated by a previous initiating guru, and he gave me that name, Nara Narayan Das. And then, okay, put me onto the screen. I can't see him, so you can just speak. Put me onto the screen. And then I got reinitiated thereafter, and my name became Brhat Bhagavata Das, because I was doing quite well, you could say, in book distribution. And then after that, my sannyas name is Bhakti Brhat Bhagavata Swami. So Narayan Prabhu, tell us your question. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Maharaj, I've been hearing a lot about transcendental loving service, devotional service. So I would like to know what is it actually? This devotional service. Am I actually doing it properly, or if I am doing it, how can I improve it and something like that, Maharaj. So I just want to know, like, what is it really this devotional service? What is it actually?
All right, that will also be answered in the next characteristic, which is Subhada, which means pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. That will be answered more there. However, I can say something now. Now, before you came to Krishna consciousness, Narayana Prabhu,
Yes,
how
Maharaj.
many years ago since you came into contact and started practicing Krishna consciousness? How many years now?
About 7 years.
Nice, 7 years. So now, prior to these 7 years, you were doing some activities that were not so nice, or you were following everything prior to that?
Not very nice, Maharaj.
Okay, all right. So in this past 7 years, you are not doing those not so nice activities now, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
But you are doing nice activities in Krishna consciousness.
Yes, Maharaj. By the mercy of the devotees, my
Yes,
Shiksha
yes,
Guru.
yes, yes. That's true by the mercy of the devotees, by the mercy of Shiksha and Diksha Gurus and others. That's true. And by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So can you see the difference in your life 7 years before and 7 years since now?
Yes, there's a lot of difference.
Yes. That means you are engaged in devotional service. It's very scientific. The proof is already there.
Okay, Maharaj.
Is that all right to answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Yes. And keep at it for the next 7 years and the following 7 years and the following. Keep at it until your last breath and you go back home, back to God. It's a blessing.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Next question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, come onto the screen, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Okay, Anjana Gopika, now keep to the question.
Yes, Maharaj.
What
Maharaj,
is the question?
how can we distinguish the pure devotional service in the just like we are taking from the association? How can sometime we just trying be in the association, but we cannot distinguish means what is the pure devotional service? Are we in the right track or not? How we can understand?
The pure
Because of
devotional service is kleshagni. It actually removes you from the distressful conditions, which we discussed yesterday. See? And pure devotional service will come to the next point, the second characteristic of pure devotional service. It is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Even for your question, it's about to be answered in the next characteristic of pure devotional service. Are we okay so far? All right. Next question. Otherwise, I can move on. Let's see.
Maharaj, Krishna Daya Prabhu is there. You want to ask a question?
Krishna Jaya Prabhu from
Hare
Kanya.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It's a
Come on to this.
yeah.
You got the video yet?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to do so. I'll just
So
ask the question.
unfortunately, you cannot get your darshan. Okay, tell me your question.
Maharaj, the first characteristic is relief from all material distress. But then we see, like example, the Pandavas, they went through a lot of suffering.
Oh,
Which is a contradiction to this characteristic.
And what about Prahlad Maharaj?
Yeah, Prahlad Maharaj, Pandavas.
Namacharya Haridas Thakur.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And what about Jesus Christ? Also, Prabhupada said that was his favorite example.
Yes.
Yes. So, the Pandavas and Namacharya Haridas Thakur, and also, Prahlad Maharaj, they are not reading and studying Nectar of Devotion. So the Pandavas and Haridas Thakur and Prahlad Maharaj are within the Leela Shakti or pastime potency of the Lord, which I mentioned in some lectures earlier on this week. So in other words, they are going through those inconveniences, those distressful situations, even like life-threatening situations. That is arranged by Krishna. It is arranged by
Krishna.
Now why? Krishna wants to show the world, and Krishna wants us to learn that even in the deepest features of anxiety and difficulty and problems, these devotees, amazing associates of the Lord, eternal associates, the Pandavas, Prahlad Maharaj, Namacharya Haridas Thakur, and Jesus Christ, these personalities, they will never take service from Krishna to protect them. They'll never take service from Krishna to protect them. But we should know that we are not in that category. We are not within the Leela Shakti of the Lord. Our sinful activities are not within Krishna's pastimes. It is our own mundane pastimes in this material. See? So therefore, whatever we are going through in terms of distress and depression and anxiety and problems and challenges, Krishna is showing that your problems and challenges and distress is actually tucham. Tucham means it's insignificant compared to what the Pandavas and Namacharya Haridas Thakur and Prahlad Maharaj and Jesus Christ went through. It is completely insignificant. Do you agree, Krishna Daya Prabhu?
Yes, yes, Maharaj.
Yes. But that's the glory of devotional service. The glory of devotional service through the consciousness of the Pandavas, to the consciousness of Prahlad Maharaj, to the consciousness of Namacharya Haridas Thakur, and even just mentioning the names, of Maharaj Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev, and Mother Kunti, and Queen Draupadi. Just mentioning the names is auspicious for us. And just even reading about the distressful condition that they went through and states of suffering that they went through also is very auspicious for us. But our sinful activities and our distresses may not be so auspicious for others to hear. You agree?
Yes, yes.
So there's a difference. That's the second point. There's a difference. So the glory of the Lord's eternal associates and devotees is that even in the most, you could say, provoking circumstances, the deepest and darkest of times, they will never pray to Krishna, please come and protect me and save me. But we cannot, you could say, imitate that consciousness. We need protection. We need saving. Because, we are engaged in sinful activities, or one is engaged in sinful activities in the material world. That's the difference between this nectar of devotion that is being speaking to us, the difference of their consciousness. You know for a fact that you do not have to tell Namacharya Haridas Thakur, or even Prahlad Maharaj, or even the Pandavas who are Aryans by nature. Srila Prabhupada said, you don't have to tell them to follow the 4 regulative principles, right?
Yes.
But we are coming to devotional service by being involved in breaking one or more of the four regulative principles before coming to Krishna consciousness. And we may still have the desire in like a regulated way to engage in, regulated principles of authorized sense gratification too, like in Grihastha ashram and so forth. So it's very different. It's very different. So their lives are glorious. Their pastimes are glorious just to show us on what level of devotional service they are on. They will never even take service from Krishna for help or for protection. Why? Because they always wants to be engaged in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service to please Krishna. And even if it means that we are going through some anxiety and distressful situation, for us on a practical level, never ever give up not putting your hand in your bead bag and chanting your japa, irrespective of what the circumstances and difficulties that may be. That may be. So that is another way of looking at it on a practical level for us. Is that okay, Krishna Daya Prabhu?
Yeah, I'd like to add, sorry Maharaj, I'd like to add one more thing. However, Draupadi, she still seek Krishna's help at the last moment, right?
No. Draupadi didn't seek Krishna's help in the last moment. See? You want to know how?
Yes, Maharaj.
Wonderful. Nice question. Glorious question. You see, Draupadi first appealed, to her family members, her husbands. That didn't work out. Then Draupadi even appealed to great personalities like Bhishma and Drona, who were on the side of the Kauravas. That also didn't work out. See?
Yes.
Eventually, Prabhupada says that because Draupadi now realized that even her family members are fallible and could not save her. See, in that sense. And although they were like illustrious devotees of the Lord, but it's actually within the Krishna's Leela Shakti, pastime potency still at the same time. See? So when Draupadi was holding the sari with one hand, when she was being disrobed by Dushashan, that rascal, she was crying out to Krishna. And what she was crying out to Krishna? She was crying out, "Hey Govinda!" But she was still having one hand on the sari, not to be further disrobed. See? So she was holding on to her chastity. It's a very deep point here. She was holding on to her chastity with one hand. Yes. But Krishna says, anyone who comes to me must even give up all moral, social, and ethical values. And then I will come to you. She was holding on to her chastity with one hand of the sari, and the other hand was up in the air. And she was praying, "Hey Govinda," in the consciousnesses. How is it that Dharma has been lost in this assembly? There is no spiritual life here anymore. In other words, kind of blaming the Vedas, the Upanishads. She's in the Mahabharata itself, so we can't blame the Mahabharata. They're kind of blaming the scriptures and kind of blaming the Supreme Lord. See? In other words, she wanted to hold on to her chastity on the basis of dharma, on on the basis of dharma, because she was not in the consciousness of the platform of the gopis of Vrindavan. The gopis of Vrindavan even gave up their chastity for their own husbands. The gopis of Vrindavan even gave up their moral, social, and ethical values. In fact, to an extent which sounds a little bit harsh, one gopi, married gopi, was even breastfeeding a little baby. And when she heard Krishna's flute, she just put the baby aside and ran to Krishna and Vamsiva in the dead of night. Can you see that type of surrender? And somebody may ask, well, who's going to take care of the baby? Krishna will see to that if you've surrendered to Krishna on that level which we cannot imitate. Because Draupadi is very chaste. But a full surrender to Krishna, when she let go of the other sari, her hand, let go of one hand of holding on to the sari, Pada. And then when she lifted the two hands up, dharma was completely gone, completely lost. See, was completely lost. And then she said these words, Prabhupada says, Hey Govinda, hey Govinda, hey Govinda. Not thinking philosophically about dharma, not even thinking or worried about the feelings of my chastity. Hey Govinda, I am yours. Hey Govinda, you do whatever you want to do. I'm completely surrendered to you. So in that surrender, we don't need to pray to Krishna for protection. Krishna automatically protects. Krishna was not concerned about Dushashan, disrobing Draupadi. I'm going to ask you another question, and maybe one Mataji can answer without coming into the screen. Right? How many meters of sari do you use to drape yourself? Anyone? Any Mataji can say? Of course,
6 meters, Maharaj.
6 meters. Okay. 6 meters of sari. Now, Dushashan was pulling very, very strongly and rapidly. Very, very strongly and rapidly. To the extent that he was coming almost to the end, and Draupadi's inner cloth that was under the sari was about to be seen. Krishna was already incarnating as the sari, without even Draupadi knowing. Krishna already did that. See? So Krishna was not concerned about Dushashan disrobing Draupadi. He knew he already took care of that. And everyone knows Dushashan was pulling. He already pulled about 6 meters. But how come more and more and more? Was Draupadi, dressed up in a sari that is like 100 meters long? No. Krishna already did that for her. He was already protecting her without asking for it. It was because she was like in Krishna Leela, attached to dharma, attached to moral, social, and ethical values, and also in the sense holding on to a chastity eventually. Krishna is pulling her closer to himself. Krishna is pulling Draupadi closer. Look, I am there for you. I am there for you. That matters more to Draupadi than Dushashan trying to disrobe. For any devotee, Krishna's protection is always there. But at times, we may pray for protection because we are feeling that Krishna is not protecting us. That's not true. Krishna is always protecting us. Just like Draupadi was crying out to Krishna also in another way, which can be explained like this. Can be explained like this. The sun little boy, he's walking on the road. And suddenly one ferocious dog comes towards him, growling. So what does the son do, the boy? He screams, Ma, Amma, Mama. He screams. It's implicit in the scream that he's asking his mother, please come and protect me. Or Papa, please come, Papa, and protect me. He's not saying, Mama, come and protect me. He's just using the word Ma, Mama. See? Or Papa. So in a similar way, Draupadi is not asking for protection from Krishna, but she's simply so surrendered. Hey Govinda, hey Govinda, hey Govinda, and lifting her two arms up. And then she feels, oh, this Dushasha. He's still trying to disrobe me, but there's so much unlimited sari. So Krishna incarnated like that. Draupadi is such an intimate, you could say, associate of Krishna. That Krishna will personally incarnate as himself, has a sari, after those, 4 or 5 or 6 meters have gone, then that's Krishna himself. And what is Krishna doing? As, Dushashan so-called is trying to disrobe, Krishna is robing, is robing again. In other words, is covering her again with the sari, and Dushashan is getting wounded. See? So with that full surrender of Draupadi to Krishna, Krishna not only protected her, not from being disrobed in the Kaurava assembly, but Krishna embraced her. Such an intimate thing. Krishna embraced her in the form of the sari embracing Draupadi. Is that okay?
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Any other questions, anyone?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj.
Jagannath
Padita Tarna.
Jagannath Prabhu ki jai. Tell me.
Okay, Maharaj, I have a struggle. Okay, there's 2 things happening. Number 1 is I struggle to chant in the morning. Okay, because basically when I chant in the morning, usually I slept off. Okay, and I feel I chant better in the afternoon or in the evening. And secondly, yes, Maharaj.
That's the first question, right?
Yes.
So put me onto the screen.
Yes, I'm here, Maharaj.
Yes, I can hear you, but I'm on the screen giving a response to your question.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So we should know that material life is a bitter struggle. And we have to realize that. But spiritual life and practices in spiritual life is a sweet struggle. So which do you prefer?
Sweet struggle.
Not the bitter struggle, right?
No.
And when there's a struggle in a sweet way, because the holy name is sweet, then the holy name will become sweeter still because of the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? However, the holy name, especially in japa, can be chanted any time during the 24 hours of the day and night. Okay?
Yep.
But that's especially for those who are not involved in family duties, who are not going to work, and other responsibilities at home. And the example is Namacharya Haridas Thakur. For Namacharya Haridas Thakur and others, even as sannyasis and brahmacharis, they really don't have any, inclination to attribute like some time of the day is better to chant than other times of the day. That's not the case here. But If you are involved, especially as a devotee, grihastha or householder, and you're still a devotee, it will be especially best for you to chant all your japa upon rising in the morning. And whatever you chant during the day, even in the afternoon, could be like extra time with Radha and Krishna. So your personal intimate association with Radha and Krishna should be the first activity, for the next day. And the secret to that is to actually take rest early, to rise early to complete your rounds. But at the same time, in the morning, if you're a mother, father, husband, or wife, one may have duties for the children to go to school or at home, the little ones are there, and so forth. One should not, you could say, shirk or be irresponsible as a mother, father, husband, or wife, even in the mornings. So as much as possible and as practical as possible, try to take rest early and wake up earlier, and still at the same time, being a good mother, father, husband, and wife, try to chant your japa in the morning. Patit Tarana Jagannath Prabhu, is that all right for now?
Okay, Maharaj. But the thing is, sometimes the morning japa is like sometimes like you tend to fall off, and you don't really like concentrate to chant. It's just like
That's
vibration.
all right. That's all. You have answered your own question. You said sometimes. So sometimes that may happen. It's not every day.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Maharaj.
All right.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you.
Sometimes you may overeat, right?
Oh, yes.
So every day.
Sometimes.
You can't chant your japa because you had a feast at like 11 o'clock in the night and the program finished.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that happens. That's all right.
Okay, Maharaj.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, Rasika Chandra, come onto the screen. Chandra Prabhu. Yes,
Hare
tell
Krishna.
me the question.
Yes, you were speaking that Krishna's protection is always there for us, for the devotees.
Just like your father is always protecting you, but you don't know it, right?
My question was that, how can we know or understand or identify that Krishna is there always for us? Because we are practicing devotees, we because our ignorance and because our childishness, we will not be able to appreciate that Krishna is there for us all the time. He's protecting. How we can develop this attitude, or how can we identify that Krishna is there for us all the time?
Okay.
In our
Rasa
sadhana.
Apsa Kunteya, 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the opulences of the Absolute. Right? What does it mean? Rasa Apsa Kunteya.
I'm the tasting.
Taste in water. Right? Now, if you stop drinking water, what happens?
We can't survive.
Yes, that's Krishna. He's protecting you. That's Krishna. He's protecting. So the more we read and understand the Bhagavad Gita with the purports of Srila Prabhupada, and the more we read and understand Srimad Bhagavatam, you will always feel that Krishna is protecting. And the more you favorably associate with devotees, you'll feel that Krishna is protecting. So Krishna's protection comes in various ways. Although there's another way that Krishna will show you that I'm protecting. Is that if you do not follow, if one does not follow, the regulative principles, or one does not chant one's japa, obviously you may feel that I am losing Krishna's protection, but Krishna is not failing to protect you because of one's one's lapse, in following, Krishna conscious practices. you will know that Krishna is not protecting you. No. But because of your sincerity and due to some weakness of some overwhelming material desire, one may do some activity that is unfavorable in Krishna consciousness. It may be materialistic activities or even sense gratification. But you have a taste of feeling protected by Krishna. But now you have a taste that what's happening to me? I'm in Maya. That is true. Okay? So what Krishna does? He arranges for you to go through some situation where you fall down so hard that when you get up, you will never try to fall down again. Krishna gives you that experience. And that's when you'll realize Krishna is protecting. See? Once you come to Krishna consciousness, one should be convinced that one's material life and sense gratification is finished. But however, if one is not convinced from one's own perspective and own side, due to lack of immaturity in continuing to practice Krishna consciousness, from Krishna's side, he does not change. Oh, now you become weak? Okay, go. Oh, I won't protect you. No. In fact, Krishna becomes more determined. And Krishna arranges for you to fall down so hard and you go through so much suffering that when you get up and you crawl again and fall down and get up and walk, try to walk and then crawl and fall down again and then get up and now walk nicely, that experience makes you fully realize that Krishna is always protecting. So I don't advise and I don't pray that anyone goes through such experience. Because your material life is finished. Don't even consider going back to it. Is that all right?
Yes. I have a second question.
Next question. Tell us.
You were speaking about the weeds and we have to beware of the weeds, while otherwise the weeds will choke up our devotional kripa. So because of our immaturity or because of the subtleness of the weeds, we as practicing devotees, we maybe not be able to identify those weeds or really, because I take the example of the president. Maybe from his side, he is convinced that this is the only way to speak to the devotees, to convince them, because maybe he was trying to push some of his opinion to the devotee. But how can we identify that this is a weed, unwanted weed, and this is our devotional kripa? Because we are not.
Let me first clarify the example I gave of the temple president. Okay? Then I'll answer your question, because I need to clarify a little further so you'll understand it better. Now, the temple president is Rasika Chandra Prabhu. The temple president is Rasika Chandra Prabhu. Or Rasika Chandra Prabhu is the temple president. Which one is first? Which one is first? The temple president is Rasika Chandra Prabhu, or Rasika Chandra Prabhu is the temple president? Which exists first?
Temple president is Rasika Chandra.
Which exists first?
Temple president.
Okay, let me ask you the next question. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna. Which one is first?
Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Krishna Prabhupada gave us a Krishna book, and he said Krishna, and below that the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You got it? So who existed first? The position of the Supreme Lord, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Krishna exists first? Which one exists first?
Krishna.
Good. Now you have understood my question and the answer. So similarly, who exists first, Rasika Chandra Prabhu or the position of temple president?
The position of the president was there.
Who
And
created?
The authority.
Yeah, the authority is who? It's a person who created the post and others manage the post.
Yeah.
Right? For example, Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India. Or you could say the Prime Minister of India is Narendra Modi.
Okay.
You understand the point? So somebody created the post of Prime Minister. It wasn't Narendra Modi. He existed as a person before the post existed. So similarly, Rasika Chandra is there. And secondly, as a facility in his service is the temple president's post.
Yes.
But Rasika Chandra should always be a person and not become the post of temple president.
Yes.
So when Rasika Chandra becomes overwhelmed with the post of temple president, then he may exhibit the post more towards his relationship with others than as a person as Rasika Chandra. I'm just trying to clarify that example I've given in context of what I spoke at that time. So don't use that all the time in other examples, just in context.
Yes.
We okay? Yeah. Now, your question is, how do we identify these weeds? Is that your question?
Especially when the weeds are very subtle, like it's a very fine line between.
Yeah. How do you identify whether it's a weed or whether it's a devotional creeper? That's what you're asking.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? That means you do not know how to identify it by the nature of the question. Not specifically you, but you're asking the question for everyone in general. So if one does not know how to identify whether it's the devotional creeper or the weed, that means one does not know how to identify. That's your first answer. Are we good?
I was asking about the subtleness of the weeds, like if it is gross, like meditating and
Hold on a
so.
second. Can you first digest the first answer I've given?
What?
You must hear first, then you can understand. The first answer is that your question is, how does one identify whether this is the devotional creeper or it's a weed, unwanted creeper, right?
Yes.
So if somebody asks such a question, that means the answer is they do not know how to identify. That's why they're asking the question.
Yes.
You understand that? Are we clear so far?
Yes.
Yes. So that's the answer. If you do not know how to identify whether this is the devotional creeper or you're watering a weed, what should you do? Now that's my question to you.
Yes.
What should you do?
Have to refer to our mentors.
Yes, you have to take your situation, and your concern about yourself. You're not sure whether this is Krishna consciousness or something else in your actions and activities. And you have to check with your spiritual guides, with your Shiksha and Diksha gurus at least. You have to check. That's how you identify them. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Yes. First, one should admit and recognize that I cannot distinguish between the two, the unwanted creeper and the devotional creeper. And then one should go about with someone who can identify it for you and then make you progress in Krishna consciousness. Is that all right? Rasika Chandra Prabhu?
Maharaj, I was asking that
Come onto the screen. I want to see you. Come onto the screen.
I was asking that if one doesn't even identify the unwanted Kripa, how he can go to his mentors and because he hasn't identified the unwanted Kripa.
That's not. Everyone knows that certain activities they are doing is not conducive in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
People know that. See?
Yes.
Okay, get me back on the screen. Get me back on the screen. Thank you. Yeah. Now listen very carefully. You know, what if one devotee who wants to get married, right? And then he comes to the deities. You know, the deities maybe Shishirada Madhava, Shishirada Shamasunda, you know, he comes to the deities. And in front of the deities, he watches. He takes darshan and he prays to the Lord. And his prayers, you know, my dear Lord, I know that a devotee can get married and enter into the Grihastha ashram, but I do not know who to get married to. Okay? So then what happens? At that moment when he asks the question to the Lord, please give me a sign who I should marry, then one flower drops off from Radharani's hand, which was meant for Krishna. Okay? And then he said, oh, that's a sign. That's a sign. And as soon as he turns around, he sees that other devotee, you know, young lady, Mataji, initiated also, like that. And he takes it as a sign that, you know, I should marry this girl. Because the flower from Radharani's hand fell down. And then he goes to her and he tells her, did you see that? And she said, yes, I saw that. And that the flower fell down from Radharani's hand. So then she asked, what does it mean? He said, well, I was considering to give me a sign to get married to someone, and this is the sign. And she said, I was also feeling the same way when that flower fell and I saw you in front of me. Now, what is that? Is it distinguishing between devotional service and an unwanted kripa or what? What is that? I mean, this person wants to get married, but he wants a sign from Radha and Krishna who to get married to, as if it's his goal in life. But instead of going to the proper routine, you know, of proper routine in a cultured way to like consult with other vanaprasthas and grihasthas who are already married of how I go about this. He's doing it his own way, as if, you know, that will nourish his devotional kripa. And he's thinking that Krishna gave me a sign. Krishna gave me a sign. So I'm giving you one little example of how we should, like, it's such a subtle thing to distinguish between the unwanted kripa and the devotional kripa. So we're not saying that this person should not enter into Grihastha ashram. See? But the consciousness in which is processing that to connect to Radha and Krishna to give him a sign is not the right thing. And what will happen eventually? And if she felt the same way, as if, you know, they are both so close to Radha and Krishna. Now that's a kind. We are so close to you both, and Radha and Krishna has given us a sign. But he doesn't know unknowingly They are both taking the position of Radha and Krishna themselves in the material world. See? So therefore it is very, very subtle. I'm just giving you one example. Very subtle. Very subtle. And what happens? What if after the marriage it doesn't work out? And what they lose faith in the deity? Oh, that flower fell, what happened? Of course, a flower fell for you to get married to her, that's what you said, but then Krishna sorted you out and you can take Vanaprastha early. In that sense. See? So Krishna uses your own material desires, fulfills it, and then purifies you of that desire according to your desire. That you wanted to fulfill the desire. Then Krishna desires come in, I will purify you. I will purify. So it's a fine line. You're right. It's a very subtle thing. Therefore, we should always check with our Diksha Guru, Shiksha Gurus, and superiors in those particular ashrams who are experienced and we have faith and relationship in one's own community. All right, we a little bit over the time again today, slightly, by a few minutes. It was wonderful again being with you today. And make sure there's a beautiful verse which I said, by rendering devotional service unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from this world. You know, yanayati ashu vairagyam. You know, yananam chayan ayutika. It's a beautiful thing, wonderful thing to be engaged in devotional service and become free from material distress and anxiety. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Ananta Kodi Vaishnava Vranda ki.
Jai.
Goswami Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki. Nectar.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Jai.